that's right. Let's wake up the crowd. You know, the good news is we are going to win this. We are going to win this, and you are going to be so proud of yourself. So proud of yourself that we are winning. We are winning a great victory as a tiny minority. A tiny minority. We are the 300 Spartans. We are taking on something that you can be very proud of. Don't be afraid of the fact that the great big cream puffs of Pompeo and the Americans are against us. They will fall. They will fall and they'll be embarrassed. That they will look like the sort of idiots that pushed for the Vietnam War and then had egg on their faces when it became quite clear that that war was an absolute abomination, resulting in the death of 1 million people in Southeast Asia. Irreparable damage to the American psyche and the Australian psyche. It was an embarrassment. And you know who Albanese is going to look like? Albanese is going to look like Harold Holt. He's going to look like Billy McMahon. He's going to look like all those people that crawled to the Americans. What I do believe, he's probably going to release Julian Assange just before the next election to try to look big. But by then, we will be effectively another state of the United States. You know, I know that Richard Miles has got a picture of Donald Trump on his wall. He's got a picture of Joe Biden on his wall. He has sold us out so completely. We are now part of the US Navy. We are now part of the US Air Force, where you can only go to war if the US goes to war. We will definitely go to war if the US goes to war. There is no longer a country called Australia as far as international relations go, and that is a disgrace. That is an absolute disgrace. I'm going to finish with a couple of stories. Imagine if you were an Iraqi mother, say back in 2005, 2008, and your husband, who's a hard-working taxi driver, gets pulled over by the British or the Americans, and he gets tortured to death. Like, as happened so many cases, even though he was just a taxi driver and some idiot soldiers decide that he's Al-Qaeda and they torture him over a period of days and he dies. Now imagine that there was no inquiry and you went to get justice, and you understand that mistakes happen in wars, but you went to get justice and you found out that that inquiry was a sham, that nobody got blamed. And then the Americans even tried to cover up that it even happened at all. Now, this is just one case. 25,000 murders were deleted from the records by the Americans. How would you feel if you're an Iraqi and you knew that? And that's fact. How would you feel if you're an Iraqi and you were just trying to take your kids to school and they were shot to pieces by an Apache helicopter like we saw in Collateral Murder, and you're carrying your 5-year-old who's dead or dying, and then the Americans tell you it didn't even happen? How would you feel if you were the last remaining person in Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria, and everyone in your family had been killed, and not only had they been killed, the Americans, the Australians had lied about the fact that it happened, and then papers like the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Sydney Morning Herald lied about it as well, and they didn't even cover Assange. How would you feel? I know how I'd feel. I'd be strapping some explosives and I'd be going to America. Yeah. And that is what will happen. That's what I would do, and why wouldn't you? And you know why this is important? Because they know there is a man called Julian Assange. They know there is one person in the West who stood up. One person in the West who said no. One person in the West who didn't do anything except expose the truth of what went on in Iraq. And that was enough. It was so disgusting. It was so despicable. And it wasn't just the Americans. It was all the lackeys. It was the Germans. Everything. The diplomats. It was lies. Everything about the Western way of war was a lie. And one man exposed it, and what did we do? We put him in jail. And what did the Sydney Morning Herald do? They said nothing. The Washington Post, the New York Times, they're complicit. The future of the world, it's not an exaggeration to say the future of the world depends on this case. If we let Julian Assange die for exposing war crimes, death, murder, lies, what do you think is going to happen to someone who tries to expose a mass murder? Say they decide to go and kill a nationality, say in East Palestine, they just kill everybody that's a witness to the terrible thing. They just murder them all. What's going to happen to the whistleblower? They're going to get killed. They're going to get put in jail. They're going to be charged under the Espionage Act. If we don't stand up now, there'll be thousands more Julian Assanges, and there will be no justice. There will be no justice if we don't stand up now. Now, you're all doing that. You're all doing that. Now, 250 years ago, white people came here and we started a settlement not far from where we're standing. Obviously, for many, many unlimited thousands of years, there were already people here, and I believe their magic is here with us today. Australia, my ancestors were convicts. My grandfather fought in the Second World War. I often think, what would they want us to do? What would they want us to do? People who came and fled from Europe. They could have gone back to Europe. They didn't want to go back to Europe. Europe was corrupt. Europe provided no chance of a decent life for someone without money and someone who wasn't prepared of a life of crime disguised as establishment action. This country gave us a life. This country, my parents got scholarships. They were the first people in their family to get to university, and I imagine many people here are the same. This country is not the United States. Richard Marles is an idiot if he thinks we have shared history. We have a very different history. We are not based on slavery. We are not revolving around guns. We are a different country. We stand for truth. We stand for no bullshit. We stand tall in the face of adversity. We don't bow down to other countries. It's ridiculous that now the China hysterical people running around like chooks with their heads cut off their head, they say, oh, okay, China's not going to invade us, but they're going to do industrial invasion. They're going to bring their corporations here, and they're going to influence our politicians. They say that with a straight face when all our politicians, all our corporations are completely owned by a foreign country already. And it's despicable and it's disgusting. You people are standing up to it. This is Australia. We don't want to be American. If we wanted to be American, go and live in America. And we need to stand up to the people who say it's okay to put truth tellers, to put people who stand up for dead Iraqis, stand up for law, stand up for justice. The country that says it's all right to murder whistleblowers, we say no. I'm standing in trial and I'm happy to go to jail. It will probably be the only way I'll get justice because this government is so bent. We are so beholden to the Americans. But I'm going to go to jail, and I know when I go to jail, everyone here is going to support me. Everyone here is going to support my children. I'm not just talking, I'm living by example because it means so much. It is so damn important. I've got 15-year-old kids, just like most people here. If you're not young people yourselves, what sort of world will we leave them if we leave it where whistleblowers, anyone who speaks up about corruption, anyone who speaks up about murders, anyone who does the right thing gets chucked in jail? What sort of a dystopian, disgusting world will that be? It's not good enough for our children. It's not good enough for our ancestors. We stand up for justice. Our enemies only care about money. They would sell Australia for $100 billion. They would drink our blood if they thought there was a good return on it. They hate us. They have fooled us. We are here and we will beat them. The great thing is we will beat them because we are right. And whenever people are right, they end up triumphing. I always, when I think of Julian, I think of a guy called Tyndall. Tyndall was a churchman who decided, quite rightly, he couldn't believe that the priests of the time in the 1500s wouldn't let the normal people read the Bible. And they would tell them what was in the Bible, and Tyndall would say, well, that's not actually what the Bible says. And they'd say, shut up, you don't understand. It's more important that we put out our doctrine than what you tell them what's actually in the Bible. Now, Tyndall made a point to say, I'm going to let people know the truth. And he translated the Bible into English. And you know what they did? The state killed him. The state killed him just because, like Assange, he wanted the people to know the truth, and they did not want. So people in government, you are the people that would have killed Tyndall. The Henry VIII's hideous courtiers that wanted a pay rise, and they killed Tyndall. And a couple of years after Tyndall was dead, his Bible became the official Bible. But that's the sort of situation we're living in. They can't handle it. They can't handle anybody exposing the truth. But the truth will always win, just as it did in Tyndall's case, just as it has every other case. So be proud of yourselves. Be proud of yourselves for turning out here day in, day out. It's not popular. A lot of people don't like Assange. It's made up on very spurious grounds. But you are right. We are right. We will win, and you will be so, so proud for the legacy you leave for your children, because you stood up when people had to stand up, and most people didn't do it.